Hey everybody, welcome to my live painting demo. I'm about to get started here in a minute. Hopefully a few more people will join in. Tonight I am doing this painting I'm titled Puppy Love. Let me turn it around. Let me turn my sound down. Um, there, you can see it there is a young woman holding a dog. This is for a commission, but I'm going to get a quick start on it tonight, and you get to watch that process. Anyway, so get right to it. I have my colors laid out. This is a larger painting, at least for my little studio here. It is, um, this painting is 16 by 20 inches, and I'm going to put this at actual size so I can start to do my measurements. There we go. I size it up, the image on my screen, the same size as that I'm painting, so I can do a direct one-to-one measurement. And then also I can do something called site size painting, which is you have your reference being the same size as your panel or canvas, so that you can look back and forth between the two and um, compare the proportions, the drawing, etc. Anyway, I see there's a few people here. Let me know where you're watching from. I always like to know. And if you have any questions about painting technique, colors that I'm using, anything about uh, working, um, marketing your artwork, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm gonna use I guess this is number 4 or number 6 round bristle brush just to get the initial lay-in. And again, I'll just start with some measurements. I'm wearing a sweater tonight because my furnace has been out, and it's been out the whole week, and we're going to get it replaced tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? No, Thursday and Friday. So hopefully soon, because it's a little hard doing these demos in 40 degrees. That's about what it is. Um, I have a coworker here tonight watching. That's Angela. She's not an artist, but she is a great supporter of mine. She's been here for a lot of my live demos, and I appreciate her support in that. Okay, one side of the head. The other side is more like over here. Okay, just want to sort of get the outside framing of this quickly. See where I am. It's only less than half an inch, or less than an inch from the top. Okay. So one important aspect of getting a likeness is actually the outer shape, or the overall shape and frame of the head, and getting that sort of dimension in space. It's technique that um, John Singer Sargent followed. I don't know if he started it, but he would paint the the overall mass of the head first, and then after all that looked just like the person, just the general overall shape, then he would paint all the detail stuff at the very end. So he did teach some classes at the the studio that was started by his teacher, and he would sort of instruct his students to, to paint that overall shape. And then if it really, if they were off by a lot, he would kind of give them a little bit of a hard time with that and say, is that what it really looks like? Okay, so I'm getting just a little bit of the gesture here, and then we're going to have the puppy's head come in right about her eye level. Let me check where the eyes are coming in. Oh, I have Angela says she's casting tonight, watching me on her big screen. Let me see. Right to the top of the eyelid here. Something like that. And if I get the right angle to the eyes, that I generally helps. Sorry, I'm stuttering tonight. It helps to get measurements a couple different ways. Get the measurements relationship to each other, get the distance apart. Generally, she's looking pretty much straight on at us, so her eyes will be about an eye distance apart. This is the width of the eye right here, and then you're gonna have to change color here because I made too many marks. Now I can't really see it. So let's say one eye is right here, and okay, there, that measurement holds up. And then I'm going to have about an eye distance apart here. So if I measure from like corner to corner of the eye and then corner to corner again, then you can see. And generally the width of the face will be 5 eye distances. So I can kind of see here, there's one eye, and then the other one's going to start right here. So I'm going to have to move that one over a bit. I'm going to take that measurement again from the side, assuming that my screen view is accurate. So I'm getting that outer edge a little bit closer to here, which seemed about right. Okay. And then if I look to see where the nose is and the bridge of the nose in relationship to the eye, it's closer on this side and then further away here, which goes to the fact that she's turned a little bit to that side. And also this distance here is going to be shorter than the one on the other side. So again, it's going to be something like here, there's a little bit of her hair, you see a bit of her ear, and then we'll have this distance here, which looks about right. And again, the top of the dog's head will be coming in around here. Ear, flopping ear. Let's see a little bit of that dog's face there. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more of her face before I get to the dog to make sure I get the placement of some of those features right, and I'm going to use those features to help get the measurement of the dog's face. Get a little bit of her dimple here. So I'm just trying to get the feeling of the larger mass shapes of the face, and then get the shape of her smile. If you notice there's a curvature to the upper lip, bows upward, and then the lower lip also. So I have to have this cheek drop down a little bit more, and then the mouth is coming up a little bit higher in there. So if I look, this distance, the corners of her mouth are aligned with the bottom of her nose. It would be very easy to draw the mouth too low. I started to anyway. So I want to make sure that I'm getting that her mouth high enough there. Something like that. And that also means that I was drawing her chin too low. So I do want to get a measurement of that. Okay. So yeah, see how massive I made her chin compared to that. So obviously that's not right. Fortunately, I don't have something to measure with that's long enough right at hand. Okay, or I don't have enough screen to work with is part of the problem. So right to about there is where her chin's going to come. So I have that. If I look, something's not quite right. Let me measure from the bottom. Maybe that'll be a little easier. Yep. So if I measure from the bottom, I don't know. Something's not right here. Hopefully I have the right size panel. I've done this before where I start off with a panel and it's actually not the right size, and I don't have my bigger ruler here with me to double check. So let's just see. That's 12. by, that's 16, and that's 20. So that's right. I have the right size panel. And I have this set up to be 16 by 20. So all's good. I just, oh, there is more picture here. That's what threw me off. I didn't have it scrolled all the way down. I thought I did. Okay, sorry, just scared myself a little bit. So I do this all the time. I I don't realize that the picture is scrolled and I start measuring from the wrong place. Okay, so the bottom of the chin, that's right. So I have to measure the bottom of the mouth because I made her a couple things too low, probably the bottom of her nose. So let's double check that. I know this seems a little tedious. I I went to a demo of an artist named Mark Tennant. Some people will know him. He's pretty well known, and his paintings look nice and loose, very modern. And in the demo, he must have spent 2 hours just measuring, doing a very light pencil sketch, and before he did um, any, it was a charcoal drawing. Before he did any lines that were dark enough that you could actually see them. So I'm moving her mouth up here. So that's feeling better. That's where I'm putting her mouth, and then the chin is here. Okay. So I'm just going to come in with a little bit of pink and cover over my wrong mouth, just so I can see it a little bit better. It's something close to what the flesh tone is eventually going to be, just so I can start to see the things. Okay, that's helping. All right, so now I need to get the contour of her chin a little bit more accurate. So I have the eye here. This is coming down. I'm looking at the distance from the corner of her mouth out to the side. So this is coming down, and then her chin, something closer to that shape. Let me keep on going with another color here. Okay. And feel like that's a little closer. Let's get this edge of her nose measured because I feel like it's starting to get away from me a little bit. So this is the edge of her nose. Let's get a little bit of drier paint. My paint got a little bit too wet and starting to run all over the place. Okay, so we got her nose. I'm just going to put in a little bit of a darker red color underneath her nose here. She's in a cool lighting situation, so there isn't any strong shadow on her, but there is a little bit of shadow there underneath her nose. And you can see there's just a little bit of makeup on her cheeks there, giving it a little extra orangey red. So I'm just going to put that in. Okay. And let's clean up her smile a little bit. Just want a little bit of white with a touch of blue in it. It's not very attractive to get too much gray or yellow in the paint for teeth, so keeping them bluish is sort of a safer bet. And I think photographers a lot will kind of whiten teeth by making them a little bit bluer. You don't want to make teeth white. Would look very strange in most photos or paintings. It would look like they were casting off a light of their own. So you don't want to go that white, but a little bit towards the blue side of the spectrum is a little more attractive. Okay, so that's starting to get a sense of the color of the smile. Just going to put a little bit of my darkest dark here just to push that back a little in space. Okay, great. All right. Again, if any of you have any questions, I'm more than happy to talk while painting as much as I can. My Sometimes I start to lose words if I get way over into the visual side of my cerebral cortex. But as long as I can form words, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. And again, let me know where I was about to say where you're calling in from. Of course, that's not right. Okay, let me know where you're watching from if you don't mind. So Sydney asks, is there any reason why you do lives on Tuesday? It's not bad or anything. I'm just wondering. I don't know. Just I had already was doing going to a painting workshop in town on Tuesday nights. It was already on my calendar, kind of, that I sort of had it regularly blocked off. And it just seemed like it's the kind of night of the week that most people aren't really doing that much. So um, a little bit harder on the weekends. I know as I get up on Christmas and New Year's, where most people are um, with family and stuff, Christmas Day lands on a Tuesday and New Year's Day lands on a Tuesday. So haven't quite decided what I'm doing yet with that, but I might just decide to cancel those 2 days, anticipating that I may not have too many viewers. Maybe I'll put it out to my Instagram followers to ask them what they think, if it's something they would watch if I do it. And um, they're a pretty good sounding board for this kind of stuff. I have a few really adamant people that they know they would watch, even if they're um, hanging out somewhere for the holidays. It may be a relief from family. Who knows? But okay, so I have the top of the head here. So yeah, Tuesdays they just seem to work out pretty well. I had started doing Tuesdays at 7 o'clock here, and between getting home from work and trying to get dinner on the table and running whatever other errands I may have to do, that just ended up too early. And then I found that people that were watching me on the west coast of the United States or Canada, um, that was usually while they were still at work. Unfortunately, it's pretty late at night for those people that are in Europe, and I do have some followers there, and some actually do watch really late at night. And I do have some followers also on the other side of the globe. I think we had somebody a few weeks ago from, I think it was Kazakhstan, and then someone else from Malaysia, and it was approximately 12 hours time difference. So also some Sydney and New Zealanders watching in. So Sydney asks, what do you think is the hardest part about creating a painting? Um, wow. I think concentration sometimes is the hardest thing. Is that um, I know I'm kind of get into this mindless mode where I'm painting, and it does move along. But at some point, if you really want to get to the finish, you really have to really slow down and be very intentional about where you put the paint down, um, because otherwise you're just sort of just moving paint around and not really getting anything better than what you already have down. So sometimes I find that though to be the hard part. Beginning not so much. I'm just, as you can see, I'm just sort of um, finding landmarks and stuff at this point, and then I'll try to then be more definitive about the colors and values that I'm putting down. But I just kind of want to get a feel of where everything is. Dog ear is about 3/4 of an inch from the side here. Just gonna think of it as a triangle. We got those dark puppy eyes looking at us. and the nose. Okay, and then I want to get the outside contour of the face. Again, that's sort of a triangle here. If I look at it, it comes, lines up right with the eye there. I may have to move this eye out a little bit. It looks like it's much closer to her face. I think that's going to help me there, just moving it. Going to get a little bit of that yellowy fur color that's there. Okay, and I'm thinking of this as a triangle, overall triangle shape, and there's some foreshortening there. Again, easy. It would be easy to make the muzzle too long because of how foreshortened it is. So I just have to think that it's coming out towards me and really look at the shapes there first before I really think of the anatomy. Okay, and then I have her hand. I'm just going to get kind of a general idea. Her pinky here. Got a kind of a curve of her wrist that's coming down. Got to watch the thickness there, making that a little bit too thin. How thick her wrist is. And I'm just going to make that photo a little bit smaller so I can see more of it. Trying to get a sense of where this is cutting in. So if I look, this is sort of the center point is right about here. So her arm is just a little bit outside that center point. And in that overall shape. Her shoulder, let's get a little bit of blue here so you can kind of keep the intensity of her t-shirt. Her shoulder is coming out about around where her mouth is, curving down. You see her her deltoid there, a little bit, and then a little bit of the tricep, and then the bicep coming down. Okay, so getting a little bit of her, her arms are fairly toned, so I want to make sure that I get a little bit of that in the painting. And also the sense that the shirt is tight on her arm, so there's ways that calligraphically I can accentuate that. I've exaggerated the curvature there just to remind me that the arm is round there, but I really want to get really with lighting, light area here, going to the dark to really kind of get that turn. And right in here there's tension where the arm is pushing into her chest, so I want to create accents there and that along that to create that sense of compression between the arm and her chest there. And then I do want to get a measurement of the height of her arm. So Cindy asked, do you paint or do anything with other mediums? So for a long time I only painted with thinner Gamsol. I would paint thinner in the beginning of the painting. So this arm is coming down a little bit lower. And then I have the shape of the numbers. And I hadn't really done too much with thinner, with mediums rather. And mediums can do a whole host of things. And they can help your paintings dry faster. They can give your paint more body. They can make the paint duller or glossier. They can improve the what would you call it? The slickness of the stroke to allow the paint to flow more easily. And so I really hadn't had a real desire to change the consistency of the paint that I had been using until recently. I just started using Galkid, It's made by Gamblin. I'm a almost all Gamblin product person. Use Gamsol as my thinner, Galkid as a medium. I also use Gamvar as a varnish at the end. At times, I don't varnish most of my paintings. I don't varnish. Occasional few, I want to give it a little extra protection. Try to unify the surface quality. Usually, it's the reflectiveness of the painting, so I'll varnish it at the end. But really, the varnish helps with protecting the painting more than anything. And usually, I'm either the paintings I do as sketches I'm keeping, or the ones that are commissions. I usually don't have enough time to varnish them. And with Gamvar, luckily you can varnish as soon as the painting is fairly dry, is dry to the touch. It doesn't have to be 100% cured. Whereas with Damar varnish, you have to wait several months before you can varnish it, which obviously isn't that practical. Okay, so I have most of my landmarks laid in. Let's get a little bit more of puppy paws here. There's one paw coming down, touching the letter 2. I have something a little off here. So I guess this 2 must be coming over a little bit more. Yeah, looks like I have that off. I have something about the arm off. So let's just go in and measure while I'm here. That's one part. The outer edge of the 2. That looks right. So my puppy paw must just be over further. Something like that. And let's get a measurement for him. So lately, to finish answering the question, so there's the puppy paw right there. Okay, don't know what's going on there. I have some measurement that's throwing me off here. Oh, see, the 2 actually comes. Yeah, well, here I have this problem again where I'm not seeing the whole canvas. So let's try that again. So puppy paw, and the 2. Okay. So I was right the second and a half time. So yes, I started using Galkid and only in my darks because it I'm using a lot of transparent darks and some of them will tend to dry back. Dry back means that they'll um, kind of dry flat, matte against some areas of the dark, which will be a little bit glossier, so it'll be kind of uneven. And I found that if I mix Galkids with my darks, then they maintain an overall glossy consistency, and that also allows me to get more depth or a greater level of contrast in the painting, so that it gives me um, more room to have a dynamic range of values. And so for that, I have been using Galkid. The one thing I don't like about it is that it dries much faster than the rest of my paints, and I'll find that it makes kind of a sticky mess on my palette. So I um, try to use, when I put it down on my palette, I try to use up whatever I put down before I go on um, and put more down. Or I don't, I try not to leave too much on the palette because then does kind of gum up things a little bit. I have her blue. Okay, so you see her shoulder on this side looks like it's back and up a little bit higher. So it's maybe this is more in compression against her. You really can't see it, but I imagine her neck and that area is maybe a little bit more in compression because the shoulder is coming up. Okay, so now I'm going to get into painting, being more definitive with the strokes. Um, Let me see. I missed some questions here. And I'm waving my hand in front of the phone just because sometimes the screen freezes up and there's a delay there, so I'll wave for a while like an idiot. Um, do you paint with anything other mediums? Okay. Hi AJ, Randy from Arlington. Washington, right? Arlington, Washington. Um, Taga Cali Tiwi Albi. I need to practice on my proportions, and that liquid medium years ago ruined me. Have you ever tried watercolor? So Taga, yeah. So the Gal Kit is a little bit like liquid. I haven't used liquid too much. It seems to me a little bit like Vaseline with a strong smell. Um, and I think I may have used it once or twice, but I really don't remember how it was. I'm curious to know what your negative experience was with liquid. I know some artists that use it all the time, and they especially use it if they're illustrators so that stuff dries really quickly. But I like to keep my paints really wet, so because I paint wet into wet, and the longer it stays wet, the longer I can keep on painting into it. And so if I start adding a bunch of mediums that shorten the dry time, then I can run into problems there. Okay, so I'm getting in my bigger brush. This is a flat. Um, see if I can still read the number. It looks like it says a number 11. It's a, um, I always get my brights and my flats mixed up, but I think this is a flat number 11 or 12 bristle, hog hair bristle brush. And so it has a little bit of stiffness with it. And you can't really see, but I kind of have a mess of colors on my palette. Now I'm going to put down a pretty big mass of white, and then I'm going to try to come in with the colors that I can see up there that I want to match. And I so we don't really have a traditional light dark area, but she's in a cool lighting situation. But I can see that there's yellows and oranges coming in here, and then her shadow side of the face are more sort of violets, blues and violets, against her redder flesh tones. So kind of have cool on this side and warm on that side. And so I am going to um, start to paint it in that way. I'm just going to put a mass of cooler and a little bit darker pinks, I guess. You know, close her eye up a little bit. I made her eyes very big and dark, and so she's got a little bit of makeup on her cheeks there, so I can throw in a little bit of red there, but then I want to get back to my coolish colors. And then there's going to be yellow, a little bit yellower and greens in the chin area, but I do see some lighter pinks in here. So there's not a clear cut color structure here, but I'm trying to put in a little bit more structure to help the create dimension in her face more than what I see in the photo. And then her nose is kind of overall a lightish pink color, and it's going to be a little bit darker on the lower side of her nose. I can see kind of hitting towards purple. So I'm just going to put that in, and I'm making her face too wide there, so I'm just going to get a lot of black on my brush here. Start to carve into her face a little bit where it's gotten too wide. And then enough black that I can force her neck back in space a little bit. It's not really black there, it's more of purples and magenta colors coming in. And that really is more in shadow than anything else. See oranges in here. Okay, so now the light side of the face is going to be a little bit more orange and white overall. Trying to clean up my color a little bit. I went a little bit too gray. So something like that is a good start. And there's a pretty wide transition before I get to that side. And I'm going to adjust these colors and refine them quite a bit. I just want to kind of get the overall sense of color and form here. Then I have a pretty strong yellow on one side of her face, and also kind of a strong yellow orange coming into her hair. And I'm going a little bit more intense than what's actually there. I can always get it um, a little bit duller and get some of the magenta and purple kind of being cast underneath her eyebrow there and around her eye. Get refine the shape of her eye a little bit better. Okay. I'm just mostly wiping off the brush as I go as I change colors. And I'm running out of palette space, so occasionally I will scrape with a paint scraper. Just kind of this cheap kind of Home Depot kind of things. Yep, just these are like run $4 or $5, and they just hold a razor blade. And if you're working on a glass palette, you can just easily scrape enough room or clean up at the end. Just you just kind of scrape away, and it works pretty well. That's sort of what I grew up with in art school, and I've been using that ever since. Okay, so want to make sure I get the sense that her face is moving back in space here. Got a little bit of the blues coming in again against the dog's ear. So the dog is kind of casting a shadow on her face. And I do want to get a little bit of that purples and blues, still a little bit of reds. And the bottom side of her cheeks there. Make sure I get the sense that those are turned down away from the light. So I'm really thinking this in very general terms right now, but hopefully I'm close enough that I don't have to do so much adjusting. There's a lot of cool lights right here. She must be getting like some reflected light from somewhere on her chin, is the sense that I'm getting. And then I'm missing the color in here. Okay, have I ever tried watercolors? In art school, I did play around with watercolors, and occasionally when I was traveling, I would fool around with them a little bit. They're not my favorite medium, I have to say. I'm Oils fit me to a T. I'm a messy kind of painter, and oils give you the room to come in kind of loose and approximate and then adjust as you go. I kind of think of them as like the for difference between clay and stone chiseling for sculptors, that I think of watercolors and acrylics being more like chiseling and oils being much more like clay, where um, you can come at it very gradually. So oils just happens to fit my natural process much better. Okay, so if I squint, I'm seeing that it's not too bad. I need to do, this is where adjusting around the sides of the face and getting the overall form more accurate and is really going to help me in the end, really see it, get a better sense of the likeness. Get the sense of her hair. And her hair is a little bit like a mixture of orange and black to get kind of that weird in between gold and green and orange. And then much much more black here. I have to be careful with not putting down too much black because this is for a commission that has to be delivered before Christmas. And that black just takes a long time to dry, the black that I'm using. I probably should switch to ivory black, but I have started to become fond of this chromatic black by Gamblin because of its transparency. But but I but I have to be careful not to go too thick with it, or I really will have problems with it drying on time. Hopefully, I can get enough done this week. That would give me at least a couple weeks for it to dry properly. It probably won't need that much time. Um, so I'm probably in pretty good shape regardless of the colors that I use. I know one commission that I just completed that's going to France, and it needs to ship out by the 13th, so it still has almost 10 days to dry. There was two paintings, and um, the second one I did, it's been drying for 3 days or so, and I just touched it tonight, and the black was just about as wet as when I first painted it. So um, I may have to come back and um, take out some of the excess paint for it to dry properly. Anyway, so let's clean up a little bit here. Okay, so again, starting to look at the overall sense of her shape. Her jaw just seems way too wide here. It's not that far off, but just a little bit of it that's not that's just outside of where it should be. Just keep on carving into it until it starts to feel closer. That's looking a little bit better. I can see one problem is that I have just her eye just feels like it's just um, too wide there from just the black mask that I had put down initially. Okay, that's starting to look a little bit better. Drop the tip of her nose down just a little bit. And I eventually am going to get to adjust some of these smaller features so that it really does pick up the likeness. But I'm hoping that just with the shape of the face that it's already starting to get there. Let's add a little bit more hair to her head. So Randy said Mabel used the gal kit in the black. AJ will dry by tomorrow. Oh, maybe if you use some gal kit in the black. I, I I'm wondering. I think I may have. I hate to do too much repainting on it now. It is finished, and only if I'm really desperate. Um, so I'll see how it is in a couple days. If it really isn't drying, then I may have to um, take matters into my own hands. So her shirt is very intense, and I'm thinking it's sort of right in between that ultramarine blue and the phthalo blue. I think sometimes the only way you can get some of that intensity is by doing a little bit of glazing, which heightens the color. It heightens the color because you're using the color more in a transparent fashion than than you would if you were adding white, and that creates a different kind of a different effect where you're seeing the white of the the panel through the paint. But it looks like it's already gone a little bit too opaque there for me to do that. I want to get the kind kind of orange, reddish orange of that number there. And that I can clean up later by getting a pretty clean mixture of the orange, red, and white. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about that till later. I think if sometimes if I want a really clean color, I'll use my palette knife to do the mixing. So the only colors that I get in the mixture are the two colors that I want, or the three colors. I'm doing that now, trying to get a little bit pure blue. So the phthalo is too green for the color that's up there. So it's a little more ultramarine on the ultramarine side. So if you look on my palette knife, you can see that's still a little bit too light. The darker I can go, the better, because I can get much more color in it if I'm moving away from white. Can even add a little more ultramarine blue. Okay, that's starting to get there. Let's see. Yep, that's closer anyway. And try to come in with a cleaner brush. Sometimes I just have to be okay with the fact that I'm not going to get the intensity of color that I see on my computer monitor, which of course is light emitting, so there's some colors that will come out of that are impossible to match. But a boy can try, you know. Okay, dog paw coming forward here. So that's mostly a kind of a grayish, bluish white there. It's a little bit of flecks of orange coming in. Okay. I'll have to come back with a lot more white later to get that light enough. And I see her hand is mostly in shadow here underneath the dog's throat. Just wetting my paint a little bit more just to get the paint flowing. Wetting my paint a little bit more just to get the paint flowing. And then in contrast, her arm over top of that has a lot more light on it. And doesn't have a whole lot of color, but it's still in that sort of pinkish family. So I can just go much lighter in that. When you add a certain amount of white to the paint, even if they have colors that are high key, which means they have a high tinting strength, which means that they hold a lot of color when mixed with white, that white has a tendency to dull the color, any color. So the advantage of colors with high tinting strength is that you can go fairly light and still see a fair amount of color in the paint. Okay, just putting in bigger areas of color here. I have a lot of blue mixed, luckily, so that allows me to get some of her t-shirt color in. Okay, so this is really flat, but eventually I'll have to put in lighter and darker areas here to get that arm to turn in space or the shoulder to turn in space. Okay, and then her hair does sort of a shift towards orange and yellow here. So I'm just roughing that in, not being really exact yet, just trying to get the idea. Don't have to be that exact yet. I will at some point choke up on the brush a little bit. Okay, and her arm. I accidentally got a bit of her blue t-shirt in the flesh tones there. Her the color pink is pretty cool there, but not quite as blue as I painted it. And then it does get warmer in the shadow here, so it makes me think that my idea of cool warm light and cool shadow may change here. Or maybe in her arm here she's getting a lot of blue from the shirt, so that may explain it. You don't always have to super analyze what the lighting situation is, but it is a good idea to just have kind of basic idea as you're painting. Okay. And then I get a lot of orange on the top of her arm here. Maybe that's from the number on her shirt. Who knows? And maybe some from reflecting off her face and her hair too. And then we have light coming in on this side, and that has quite a bit of yellow influence in it. So I'm just mixing some pure yellow just right in there. And have something off a little bit in here. Her hand must come down further here. And if the orange her hand, and if that's the case, the dog's muzzle is really coming down a bit further. Now I have to move the nose. So really have the nose closer to something like that with that darker color on the lip. Okay. All right. I don't mind adjusting stuff. It's helpful to catch it early though. And my palette's just one big mess right now. And so as a consequence, if I'm not careful, then every color will be in every color that I paint, and won't be able to differentiate colors. So where I need to get pure colors, I may just have to slow down, clean up a little bit, and then get back to it. Just a little bit of orange in her ear there. And then on this side of the face. And then some browns right in here. Okay. Just instead of spending a lot of time cleaning that brush, I'm just going to grab a different brush and get some of the black in the nose down. If I look, I can see my nose is not even close to being low enough. I'm just going to push it down a little bit more, assuming that the face is going to be larger than when I painted initially. Which makes more sense if I look at where the paw is, where the lower lip, that all of these things have to move down a bit. Great. Great, great. Okay. So we're about an hour in, almost an hour, and we've gotten a pretty good start here going. Pretty far from finish, but we can sort of see how this thing is starting to play out. So I like the color that's in the background. Uh-oh. My picture went. No one told me I was frozen. Ugh. Hello? Come on. La 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 la. Nope, still nothing yet.